This story was narrated by a Pakistani train driver. It is terrifying and chilling. He requested that his real name not be revealed due to concerns about his job. Let's hear his story under a pseudonym. My name is Rashid, and I work as a senior train operator for Pakistan Railways. This incident occurred a few years ago when I used to operate the Jafar Express from Rohri to Quetta. Many people don't know that if Pakistan were divided into two parts, one part would consist of Sindh, Punjab, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, while the other would only be Balochistan, highlighting how vast Balochistan is. Balochistan's terrain is filled with mystery, rugged mountains and barren plains. When trains pass through these mountains and plains, we encounter strange creations of nature. While there are many stories to tell, I'll share one incident that still sends shivers down my spine. One evening, our train was passing through the tall mountains of Balochistan. My assistant, Abdur Rahman, was in the engine with me. The weather was clear and cold. I had been unwell for the past 2 days due to the cold, so Abdur Rahman suggested I rest for a while, assuring me he would manage the train. I agreed, wrapped myself in a warm blanket, and lay down in a designated spot in the engine. While the engine wasn't particularly cold, my illness made it feel much colder. Soon, I fell asleep. I don't know how much time had passed when Abdur Rahman suddenly shook me awake. His way of waking me up annoyed me, and I asked, slightly irritated, "What's the matter?" In a trembling voice, he apologized and said, "Sir, I'm sorry, but I'm scared." Despite my annoyance, I laughed at his words, pushed off the blanket, sat up and asked, "Why are you scared? You're not a child." He replied, "Sir, I'm not a child, but a child just went under the train." Hearing this, I became serious. This was no small matter. I asked him when and where this happened, and whose child it was. My barrage of questions made Abdur Rahman even more nervous. He said, "Sir, it was a child, but not a human child." Frustrated, I asked, "If it wasn't a human child, was it a Jinn's child?" Abdur Rahman nodded quickly and said, "It looked like a Jinn's child to me." His response made me sit up straight. His pale face clearly showed he was deeply scared and not joking. I asked him to tell me everything he saw, thinking I might be able to help. What he described next was astonishing. He said, "When the train entered a tunnel near Bolan, I saw some children playing on the tracks inside the tunnel. It was surprising because it was already dark, and that place was desolate with no nearby population. I repeatedly blew the horn, and 4 of the children ran off the tracks, but one stayed. As the train got closer and the headlight shone on the child, I was shocked. The child was completely black, naked, and had only one large eye on his forehead. Startled, I pulled the emergency brake, but it was too late. The train's wheels ran over him. Already shaken by the sight of the strange child, I decided not to stop the train. But just then, a horrifying scream echoed from behind. Typically, sounds from outside can't be heard inside the engine of a moving train, but this scream was so loud and terrifying that it was audible even inside. After hearing this, I stared at Abdur Rahman in astonishment. He was still visibly scared. I reassured him, and by then, the train had moved far beyond the tunnel. I knew that mysterious entities might be present in such desolate places in Balochistan, but what worried me was the possibility of this entity seeking revenge if the child was indeed a part of their kind. Dear listeners, I'm sure you understand what I mean by mysterious entities. I'm referring to Jinns. Fortunately, the rest of our journey passed without incident, and a few hours later, we reached Quetta Kant station. The next day, however, Abdur Rahman was visibly disturbed because he had a strange dream related to the incident in the Bolan tunnel. The next morning, due to a technical fault, Our departure from Quetta was delayed, and by the time we reached the Bolan Mountains, the sun had set. The train was moving at over 80 kilometers per hour when I noticed something on the tracks ahead. Abdurrahman was even more frightened than I was. We saw children standing on both sides of the track. Their skin was pitch black, just like the child Abdurrahman had described. When the train's light shone on them, we noticed they were completely naked and each held small stones in their hands. As the train passed by, these creatures hurled stones at the engine, cracking the front glass. Thankfully, the train was moving fast, so we escaped unharmed. However, the sight of these strange creatures left me terrified as well. Abdurrahman was in worse shape, blaming himself for what had happened, saying that the entity would not spare him because he was driving the train when their child was killed. When our train reached Rory Junction past midnight, Abdurrahman had a high fever. He submitted a 15-day leave request and went home. During his leave, he managed to get transferred to Punjab and never returned to work on that route. The next time I drove the train toward Quetta, I saw those creatures again near the same tunnel. This time their numbers were in the dozens. Before they could attack, I extended my hand out of the engine window and threw a letter addressed to them. The letter read, "Whoever you are, leave us alone. This is our regular route, and we did not come in your way, you came into ours. We did not harm your companion intentionally. Still, we apologize and hope you will not harm us in the future." As I threw the letter, a stone hit my hand, injuring it. The scar from that injury remains on my hand to this day. But after that day, those creatures never appeared again, nor did they try to harm us.